Hello, I'm Boris the Bee Guy from Forest Beehive Apiary, Central Maine. In natural beekeeping, bees are never fed sugar. They only forage on real flowers. Over the past several decades, there's been a gradual worldwide decline in both the abundance and diversity of flowering plants. But there are still places around, like our small secluded forest beehive apiary, where most of the time honeybees can thrive by foraging only naturally from spring through fall and even make a little surplus honey to pay rent to the beekeeper. I keep only a few hives so that my bees can forage in balance with what the nature provides here. That way, at my apiary, I never have to resort to any supplemental sugar feeding. When honey is only naturally foraged, without any conventional sugar feeding, it has a beautiful, authentic taste. It's honey as nature intended, rich, honest, and full of life. My Russian bees are tough survivors. They winter well and have good tolerance for varroa, so I never treat them for mites with any human-engineered chemicals, acids, or oils. Normally, I wouldn't feed the bees or unite colonies at all, but nature can be random and at times unfair. The essence of natural beekeeping is making sure that the bees have enough natural forage, and I step in only when the bees truly need a helping hand. I have to ensure that the bees have enough of their own honey to survive comfortably through winter, and they never replace their own honey with sugar syrup or artificial feed. A colony that overwinters on its own honey stays healthier and starts spring stronger, with better immune balance and healthier natural gut microbiota. Horizontal Layens hives, with their deep contiguous frames and sheep-wool-insulated inner walls, are perfect for New England winters, and they help the bees retain heat efficiently, much like in a natural tree hollow. Unfortunately, this year, from mid-July through early October, and this footage is from October 4, 2025, we've had a severe drought across most of New England. The water level in our forest lake is about 2 feet lower, and even the usually reliable drought-tolerant plants, goldenrod and asters, have been suffering. With nectar and pollen in short supply, I had to dig deep into our freezer-stored reserves of frames with naturally foraged honey from the previous year. This would have been a good brood frame for wintering, except it's old and has some crystallized honey under the wax cappings. But since the weather is still warm, and the first nightly frost wasn't expected for another week, I just fed several such frames back to the bees to make up for this year's lack of forage. Before giving those frames to the bees, I gently scratched wax cappings with this uncapping fork and sprinkled a bit of water on the surface, presenting the bees with honey frames that resembles fresh nectar. With warm days continuing and plenty of water around, the bees can easily reliquefy crystallized honey and store it again as they see fit. My Layens horizontal hives and their frames contain no plastic at all, but for storing and transporting the frames of honey to and from the apiary, I use sturdy plastic totes. They fit deep Layens frames perfectly. To support the frames, I fitted each tote with 2 small extensible shower rods. After feeding the bees, there are always a few drips of honey and bits of wax left behind, so I let the bees clean everything up. I only have a few colonies, and all are healthy, so this minimal open feeding is safe here. There's no risk of disease sharing and no robbing frenzy either. My Russian bees are far less inclined to rob than conventional bees with mostly Italian genetics. A few weeks earlier, in mid-September, I had to unite a small bee colony with a larger one before winter. A united larger colony has much better winter survival chances. Here's how I combine 2 hives using the standard newspaper method in a horizontal hive like the Layens. I use a divider board with a cutout covered by a doubled newspaper, or even half of a paper bag in this instance. I make a few small slits through the paper so pheromones can pass through and the bees can slowly chew their way across. After about 3 days, the colonies have adjusted to each other's scent and are united into one strong hive. That's when I remove the divider board with paper. Look how the bees have chewed their way through paper. A couple of weeks later, I check again to make sure unification was successful, the bees were calm, and their queen was laying. I've not harvested yet this year. Hope to have harvesting footage in the next video. I like to harvest around late October, on a warm sunny afternoon after the first nightly frost, when the bees are just beginning to form their winter cluster. At that time, I'm able to see exactly which brood frames the bees are clustering on. I'll then flank those brood frames on both sides with 1-2 full honey frames for spring emergencies, and if any honey still remains, that's my surplus to harvest. After that, I'll winterize the hives. Thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe.